Welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 244 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 18 of A Feast for Crows, that is, The Iron Captain.
And as always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you're in the Buy Me a Coffee sustainer tier that includes spoilers. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I am doing well. It's good to see you again.
I know, we've been hanging out. This is the fourth time in 7 days we've been face to face, and twice in real life.
That's right. Yes, that was. It's been really fun. It's like the olden days when we used to see each other every day. Yeah, you came to my house, which is always good. And it was quite the madhouse. It was Molly's graduation party. And it was quite a chaotic scene. So I didn't get to spend as much time with you and Carson as I would have liked, but you were the first to arrive. So we did get some one-on-one time before the chaos.
Oh, ensued. I don't think I even noticed that fact. Your house is like it's a broad spectrum. I thought there were lots of people there. Well, I mean, your mother-in-law was there before.
Oh yeah, well yeah, she got there the day before, so you would have real trouble beating her.
But yeah, no, we had a great time. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks for having us. And then we had lunch together, which was nice. Yeah, that really was like the old days, just shooting the breeze and making jokes about stupid things.
Right. You even got to drive in the sigil of my house. My silver minivan.
House minivan.
Yes. Probably fought off a few spiders and other insects.
I don't know if I've got fatter or if the minivan has shrunk, but it didn't seem familiar to me at all. I mean, I know it's been part of your life since I've known you, but
close. I think we had one car before. Okay. We got that car 2008, and we met in 2005. So we did have a car before that, but
so we have a 2006 car that we bought brand new. So that almost spans our friendship.
It does, yeah. Yeah, we're heading on 20 years this coming February. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah. Anyway, so how are you doing? How's the day treating you?
I'm doing great. It's the European Soccer Championships are ongoing, and that gets me very excited because they're always fun. Uh-huh. And public service announcement for those listening in real time: it costs $80 to watch the European Championships on Fubo. I don't even know what this is. But if you speak Spanish, you can get it for $5 on the Spanish language channel.
Oh. So,
highly recommended, because that way you don't have to listen to those idiots on Fox.
Win-win.
They are terrible.
Yeah.
They are really bad. I mean, the thing is, I'm like, why did you choose these people? They are not interesting and they are not insightful. What is it? What brought you to these people?
Right. Of all the choices.
Right. I mean, so NBC, who do the Premier League, they've got insightful people and they do a very good job. CBS, who do the Champions League, they are idiots, but they are funny.
Okay, that counts. That counts.
Right? And Fox has straddled this. It's gone for neither of those two things. They're just
idiots that aren't funny. Wait, that sounds familiar.
So this way, I'm learning a little bit of Spanish, and I don't have to listen to those fools.
Yeah, is that the tournament that I set up in my office when you were at the?
It was,
the house?
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you again for doing that during your daughter's graduation party, setting up a TV for me to watch a game, which you will notice I just checked in on. I wasn't sitting there watching the game. Hey, I'm not a monster.
Whatever you needed to do, I was fine with.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed talking to your in-laws. They were a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed chatting with such folk. I'm sure they felt the same.
Well, you know me.
Yes,
I mean, these are American ladies. I'm gonna charm them. Let's be honest.
Right. What was I even...
American ladies who aren't already over my shtick.
Right. Yeah, you got to add that caveat in there.
Important qualifier, yes.
Right.
So Lucas, my son, has been promoting a game, one of these daily games. Everyone plays these daily games. He's found one called Global.
Oh, yeah. Did you tell me about this? Someone told me about this very recently.
I don't think I did.
Okay.
I think it must have been someone else. You must have other friends.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, crazy talk. But you guess a country and it tells you how hot or cold you are by color coding. And then you guess another country and you keep guessing until you find it.
Uh-huh.
And I played it one time and I guessed it on the first guess.
Was it England?
It was Uruguay, weirdly.
Oh, okay.
I just weirdly guessed Uruguay. I was in the process of typing Uganda, and I was like, let's try Uruguay instead. And I typed Uruguay, and it was it. And I said, well, that game's easy. And I've not gone back because I want my lifetime average to be 1.
Right, yeah. Those two countries aren't exactly neighbors. So
they both begin with U. That was the key. That was the key connector of those two.
I see. They give you that. They give you a hint?
No, they gave me no hint. I typed the letter U and then I changed the one I was going to guess at.
Spur of the moment.
Letter.
Okay.
Spur of the moment.
I get it. Well, good for you. Good job. Yeah, that's when you drop the mic and you walk away.
Exactly. I'm never going back there.
Right.
The family keep playing it and they're like, oh, I got it in 3. I'm like, yes, well.
Amateurs.
Let me point you to my lifetime average. When I took Carson, I took her a coffee in her work.
Yeah.
And I went to where I thought she was, but she wasn't in the classroom I thought she was. But a teacher I've known for 20 years was there. And she's a very nice lady. She's the longest serving teacher at the school. She was holding the door handle to a door. And I was looking at her and I was like, oh, do you know where Carson is? She was like, no, I don't know. And then suddenly, like the Tasmanian devil hit the other side of that door. Like, I said, is that Carson? She was like, and so it was, I mean, the funny thing about this is I spent 10 minutes in her company. We talked for a while, range of subjects. I never found out what was on the other side of the door. Just occasionally, it rattled and banged.
Could have been a tiger on the other side of that door.
It absolutely could have been a tiger. But like occasionally teachers would walk past with a sort of an arched eyebrow of, do you need some help? And Tony Kelly was like,
Oh.
I said to Tony Kelly, I said, so you, in your decades of experience, kids getting better or worse? She was like, worse, definitely worse.
Back in the day, I didn't have to hold this door nearly as hard as I do now. Exactly.
But when Carson finally found me, because I texted Carson like 5 times, like, I've got your coffee, don't know where you are, sort of thing. She came and she picked me up and we said bye to Tony Kelly. And Carson was like, I know exactly what was on the other side of that door. She's got a kid in her class that is a real problem.
Oh, like, okay. Goodness.
All right. Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Victarion Greyjoy? Because it is Victarion Greyjoy who is the Iron Captain. Well, we basically never seen him before. Now, I was going to leave it at that, but Mackelly is a professional, and he said, I think we might have seen him before. And so he did some research, and actually Victarion has appeared twice before in the books. Once he laughed at Asha mocking Theon during a feast after Theon came back to Pike, and he was also present when Balon gave Theon a lame assignment during the plans to invade the north. But that's all we know of Victarion. We know that off stage he went to Moat Cailin and held the neck against incursion from north or south. But since nobody really tried, we don't know how onerous that task actually was. And as a reminder of who Victarion is, he is the younger brother to Balon and Euron, and the older brother to Aeron, who's known as Damphair. So he's uncle to Asha and Theon.
Sounds like the guy.
Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Victarion has left the defense of Moat Cailin and is coming to the Kingsmoot. He's put Ralph Kenning in charge of holding Moat Cailin against the now broken wolves. Victarion resisted the idea of returning to the Iron Islands to claim his brother's crown. Balon had heirs, and Euron was Victarion's older brother. But when his younger brother Aeron Damphair summoned him, his mind changed. If the drowned god wills him to be king, who is he to resist?
Weather delayed Victarion and his Iron Fleet, but they have finally made it to Old Wyk, the island where Naga's bones rose up like huge white trees. As Victarion sails into the bay on Iron Victory, he looks back to take in his fleet. As the Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet, he commands the totality of the vast naval force that sails behind him. Throughout the bay, he sees ships he recognizes, including Lord Roderick Harlaw's Sea Song. However, one ship stands out.
Lean and low, with all black sails and a dark red hull, Silence sat at anchor, his brother Euron's ship. The sight of the ship forces Victarion to remind himself that kinslayers are cursed. On the deck, he sees unfamiliar-looking men who appear more monsters than man. The Lord Captain instructs his fleet to seal the bay. No one gets out unless he commands it. Victarion tasks his men with protecting the chests on board, as much depends on their contents.
His brother, Aeron Damphair, waits for him near the shoreline. Victarion kneels in the water while Damphair blesses him. They agree that their parents' blood went bad in Euron. Again, he reminds himself of the promise he made to Balon, not to physically harm Euron. Men surround Victarion as he makes his way onto shore, pledging support, embracing him, and plying him with wine.
That night his men erected a huge tent so that he might feast many of the captains in attendance. One such captain, Hotho Harlaw, offers his 12-year-old daughter as Victarion's queen. Victarion is non-committal. He's had no luck with wives. But a king will need heirs, so he agrees to consider the girl. Baelor Blacktide has a different ask. He wants Victarion to end the war. It's hopeless, as they learned in the first Greyjoy rebellion. After Blacktide leaves unsatisfied with Victarion's response, Victarion notices a woman enter the tent.
He hoped she would not come, but is simultaneously glad to see her. He calls to her, and his niece comes. She welcomes him to her Kingsmoot. He laughs. He had not seen her ship. She's parked on the other side of the island. She asks about Mackelly, and Victarion is offended that she should lecture him on warfare. She riles him about his defeats. He mocks her presence. The men voting remember when she played naked in the surf. He'll find a husband for her when he's king. She'll find a wife for him when she is queen. That touches a nerve.
Asha points out how many candidates are putting themselves forward. Victarion doesn't care. Only a kraken can sit the Seastone Chair. Asha points out that she is Balon's only child. But before Victarion can reply, silence descends as Euron and his crew enter. Victarion thinks that his brother hasn't aged a day in 3 years. He calls him Crow's Eye, but Euron wants king in front of that. Aeron says that no godless man can sit the Seastone Chair, but Euron's travels have exposed him to hundreds of gods. And wherever his sails went, the people found religion real quick.
Damphair doesn't care for these false gods, but Euron assures him that he shed their heathen blood and impregnated their women. Damphair's not appeased. Don't you see who he is? A king? Suggests one of Euron's men. Damphair spits and storms out. Asha accuses Euron of fratricide, but Euron is unfazed. He was at sea when Balon died, as his crew of mutes will attest. Victarion frowns. Asha doesn't know how dangerous it is to talk to Euron this way. Euron teases her about her marital status and offers his crewmates. She gives as good as she gets. Eventually, Victarion slams his fist down in annoyance.
Victarion and Euron exchange more barbed comments before the Crow's Eye and his men depart. Worryingly, several of the captains leave too in the silence that follows. Asha and Victarion walk the beach. He reaffirms that she cannot win. She agrees, but offers a compromise. Her votes for Victarion if they can share the rule. He thinks maybe she means as husband and wife, but she compares it to Hand of the King. Why? To end the pointless war. Return Lady Glover, Deepwood Motte, Torrhen Square, and Moat Cailin in return for Sea Dragon Point and the Stony Shore. The region is thinly peopled and far larger than the Iron Islands in totality. Victarion laughs at her. Why sue for lands we've already won? We will have the North. She compares it to a fisherman hooking a leviathan. Go back to your dolls. You need House Harlaw, she reminds him. Hotho Harlaw has offered me his daughter. I'll have the Harlaws without you, he responds. Asha knows she's beaten, but warns Victarion that all the talk around the campfires is of Euron's deeds, even those that are rightfully Victarion's. And now he reveals the truth of his wife's demise. Euron impregnated her, and for that was banished. Then Victarion murdered his own wife.
Asha is sorry for Victarion, and sorrier still for his wife, but he leaves her no choice. She must make her own claim to the Seastone Chair. He tells her that her breath is hers to waste.
You know, as you were reading a detail in this chapter, a possible bit of pedantry entered my mind.
Oh, fantastic. Why don't you leave that for pedantry? So the first thing I wanted to talk about was, what do you think Victarion's motives are here? I mean, so he is clearly a more, well, I mean, within Islanders' frame of reference, a more stable and solid person than your Eurons, your Theons.
Yes.
Maybe cut more from the same cloth as Balon. The Balon we never knew, not really the Balon we did know.
Right.
So what are his motivations for coming back to this Kingsmoot? Is he ambitious, or is his primary... Right at the end of the chapter, we learn what the real animosity is between him and Euron.
Right.
It's nothing special. It's purely animus caused by infidelity, you know?
Right.
The oldest story in the world.
Yeah.
But is that it? Is it just to prevent Euron, or is he personally ambitious as well?
Well, okay, so the chapter starts out with him originally thinking he wasn't going to make any claim on the Seastone Chair until, even when his men were saying, go do it. And he was like, no, Balon had heirs. My brother Euron's older than I am, and, you know, he had children. But it's not until Aeron, his younger brother Aeron, sends him a message, and that changes his mind because Aeron speaks for the drowned god. So I think his initial motivation was, well, it's divine intervention that I should sit this Seastone Chair. I don't think at first it was ambition, but as this chapter progresses, there's one point when I think he says to Asha, when I'm king, and he thinks, yeah, that sounds right. That has a good ring to it. So,
but that's a very good point you make, because it's similarly, it also discounts the other side of that, which is pure animus towards Euron.
Right.
If he wanted Euron to be defeated, he would have turned up anyway before Aeron's summons.
Yes.
So in actual fact, it is sort of like a religious conversion here. It's like, well, if the gods are telling me to come, I'll come. And then I think, as we've said before, people's motivations are multifaceted. It's not always just one motivation. So all three of these things are probably playing into it. But it is interesting that it took the intervention of Aeron to tip him over the edge of actually coming, that he was not going to come until that happened.
Right. Yeah, he seems like a man of duty and honor, and he was tasked by his brother to hold Moat Cailin until told otherwise, and he was going to see that through until, I mean, you know, there's Balon. Balon is the king and his older brother, and that's a high source. But there's only one higher source than that, and that is the drowned god. And when the drowned god says, you are the rightful heir to your brother, you say, okay, that trumps what my brother told me to do, I guess.
Yeah. I do also wonder if initially he thought, like you said, Balon had heirs and I have an older brother. He didn't think there was any point in him coming. You know?
Right.
I'm not going to win this anyway. I might as well continue to fulfill my duty. So some of it might be his personal ambition, and his animus towards Euron may actually be the overriding factors here. But he was just like, well, there's nothing I can do until he got the summons. And then that was a catalyst, not because he's particularly religious, but simply because he was like, well, if Aeron's there pulling the strings and can make this happen for me, then maybe it's worth my time.
Yeah, Aeron has the power to call the Kingsmoot in the first place. And if that guy is saying, I want you to be the next king, you know, then as Jim Carrey once famously said, so you're saying I've got a chance.
I've got a chance.
But so they're sailing into the bay, which is called Naga's Cradle, I believe. And Victarion is taking in the scene as we're in his mind. And he he basically knows every ship that he sees because he's the Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet. And now most of the ships that he's talking about aren't of the Iron Fleet, but he's basically the top naval commander in the Iron Islands.
Do you think the Iron Fleet is a specific thing? I mean,
yes,
because it is.
It is. Well, I'll talk about it in background, and I'll give you all the details.
I shall look forward to that. Then. I shall stop.
To answer your question, it is a specific thing.
Yeah. because I was going to say I felt like instinctively for the Iron Islands it would be a sort of like a sort of come and go as you please type thing. But you're going to tell me it isn't. All right. Great. Right.
But some of the ships that he notices, one in particular worth noting, is the ship Sea Song, which he notices because of the scythe their sigil, which is the ship of Roderick the Reader Harlaw. And Asha was right. Remember, he was so confident that he was not going to show up to this Kingsmoot when he was talking to Asha, and she was thinking, he'll be there. He's going to come. Yeah. He'll be there. And sure enough, he's here. So,
what is his sigil?
A scythe.
Oh, a scythe. Okay.
And one of the other ships that he notices is Silverfin, which is a ship of House Botley, which their sigil is basically a school of fish. And he knew that Swain Botley, who was the head of the household, was killed by Euron for refusing to bend his knee to Euron, and that Swain's heir, his oldest son, died at Moat Cailin, and he did remember that Swain had brothers and other sons. Now, we met in that same Asha chapter, we met Christopher Botley, who is by name should be the now Lord of House Botley, but because his uncle bent the knee to Euron, his uncle German is actually the heir according to Euron anyway.
Oh, so is there a possibility that the Botleys are going to be split when it comes to the Kingsmoot between those who favour the uncle who bent the knee to Euron and those who favour Christopher, who clearly is going to bend the knee only to Asha because he's basically in love with her?
Yes, I would. Well, German, his uncle, was one of the men that was in Euron's posse when he came into the tent. So he's already entrenched over there. And Christopher actually was fostered by Baelor Blacktide, who was the one that asked Victarion to end the war because he said it was pointless. So,
and I think that's a key point in this chapter to a certain extent, is that the Victarion gives off the impression that only a woman would sue for peace with the North at this point.
Right, yes.
Baelor Blacktide is essentially saying the same thing. Like, let's not have any more of these pointless wars to put you on a throne that you can sit without claiming that, and we won't all get killed for it.
Right, yeah. And when we get to there, we'll talk about how their arguments hold a lot of water. They make a lot of sense.
Indeed. Before he gets off the Iron Victory, his ship, Victarion tells his crew to keep a close eye on the chests. Much depends on the chests, but no one says what's in the chests. My initial instinct and sort of like simple interpretation of this was he's planning to bribe everyone, and he's got a ton of money to do it.
Party favors, right? I mean, that's basically what he's going to break out.
I mean, I came to your house.
Yes, you got a pair of sunglasses.
I got a pair of sunglasses and a cookie, and I was very happy when I went home. I would have named you King.
Maybe that's what Victarion's got in the chests, sunglasses and cookies. I actually will explain in spoilers what he was referring to there.
But without knowing it, what would your speculation have been? Exactly my speculation?
Yes, I would think so. Yes, it makes sense.
It feels like Victarion, as sort of like Admiral of the Iron Fleet, would have access to funds. But it also feels like he's been in the bogs for a while. Now, admittedly, no one's got anything to spend it on in the bogs, but it feels like he wouldn't have collected very much while he was there.
Now you're getting to my pedantry. That was exactly my pedantry.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes. How in the world did he stop at home and empty his treasure chests out? Just got to make a quick pit stop back at the house, pick up some coin.
One of the families that gets short shrift in this chapter is the poor Cods.
Yeah, they do.
Both Asha and Victarion think or say at various points in this chapter how everybody despises the Cods, and including Asha saying it out loud to the Cods.
Right. Yes, women despise you too. It's not just men that despise you. There's something like that. Yeah.
That's a bit rough. Do we know what the Cods did to deserve this?
Well, they're kind of... So the men of the house are kind of thought to be thieves and cowards, and the women are thought to be wanton. And there's rumors of incest within the family. So they're kind of like the black sheep of the Iron Islands, which is a pretty tough thing to do.
I was going to say, a lot of that seems to track with the Iron Islands in general, to be honest. Like, the cowardliness, yes, probably frowned on, but the wantonness, I don't know, pretty welcomed, I would have thought.
Yeah, you really have to be all in on those distinctions to stand out in this crowd.
So, one thing that stood out to me was the fact that Asha did not park her boat. I'm sure that's not the correct nautical term. I'm no sailor. Moor her boat in the harbour here, Naga's Cradle. She clearly fears the aftermath of this Kingsmoot. She's read her history and she knows that these can be bloody affairs. So she has moored on the other side of the island and rowed across the island to get here.
You know who's read his history? Her uncle Roderick, who told her, this is dangerous. Stay away from it. The loser doesn't always take this very well. Yeah.
But then, is she assuming she's going to be the loser?
There's hedging. Well, yeah, I think she is. You know, she tells Victarion, you're right, I can't win this. So yeah, I think she's hedging her bets and saying, well, I'm going to park on the far side so that, easier exit.
But she doesn't come to Victarion believing she's going to lose, I think, because part of what he tells her, the whole thing with Hotho Harlaw's daughter, is kind of like the final straw for Asha's claim, because she thinks she's got the Harlaws, but now she's hearing that one of the senior members of the Harlaws is touting their daughter to Victarion as potential queen, and now she's like, okay, I got nothing at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she probably had a pretty good suspicion, regardless, that as she spent time here, because she tells him, walk around the campfires, you're going to hear lots of talk about how great Euron is. You know, as she's counting up her support, is possibly thinking it's not going to be enough. And then when she discovers she doesn't even really have the Harlaws locked up, then it's just becoming pretty obvious. But as her regarding her parking, we keep calling it parking, mooring maybe on the far side of the island. As a candidate, if she throws her hat in the ring, she becomes even more susceptible to violence acted against her, Now, I don't imagine Victarion would harm her, win or lose, but I can't say that she's safe from the others. Like I was just saying, is Euron going to accept this loss graciously? If Victarion wins, is he just going to bend his knee to his younger brother, or is there going to be problems?
Yeah, you see, that's the strange thing, because in many respects, the winner can be gracious here. You won, Euron doesn't have any real reason to kill Victarion and Asha if he wins. And if he loses, is he going to rebel against the decision? That seems like you're lost because the majority were against you. If you fight, the majority are against you,
Yeah. Unless you can take them by surprise or something, while they're all here and not looking.
I suppose one threat of violence would be somehow a non-Greyjoy wins this thing and then decides to expunge the Greyjoys from the world.
Oh, yeah, so lessen the
threat.
But
that seems like a long shot, that one.
Yes, right, yeah. But regardless, being outside of the bay certainly means a better chance of escaping unscathed, considering Victarion locked down the bay to only his command who exit. But you have mentioned Hotho Harlaw offering Victarion his daughter as queen. And Victarion says, how old is this daughter? And she turns out to be 12 years old. And, I know we look at this with a modern eye, and George Martin wrote this to try and be historically accurate to more medieval type environment. So I understand that it's part of life in those times, but it's still kind of disturbing to think that now Victarion. I looked up his age range. He's somewhere between 31 and 43. So he is a full-grown, at least nearing middle-aged man.
Okay, let me reassure you just a little bit on this particular one. There's plenty of reasons not to be reassured, but on this particular one, it doesn't have to be immediately. He could take her for a wife in 4 years' time,
Yeah, he could take her for a wife now and not consummate it in 4 years' time, too.
Exactly. So. And I think in some ways Victarion seems like a solid guy, but there is a big black mark hanging over him on that particular front.
Where the whole killing his wife thing?
That's the one.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That doesn't bode well for Hotho's 12-year-old daughter, I have to say.
Yeah. But he doesn't seem at first to take the offer all that seriously. But later he says, to Asha, if I take Harlaw's daughter, Hotho Harlaw's daughter for wife, I won't even need you all. Now, he could have just been saying that to Asha to sound like he doesn't need her help. But it certainly comes off as if he's considering the possibility.
So this whole thing is kind of blowing up in Aeron Damphair's face a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
The reason he called the Kingsmoot was to anoint Victarion. That was what he wanted to do.
Right.
Because there was no other way to put Victarion on the throne, because he is third in line to the throne behind both Asha and Euron.
Right.
But by having a Kingsmoot where Victarion is the well-respected leader, Iron Captain of the fleet, that he would get voted in, but it's not looking that way anymore.
It's opened a bit of a crack in the dam, and water is starting to really pour through here.
Yes, and it's not just Euron taking over, by being. I think Euron is more charismatic than Victarion. I think that's part of the problem. He's making friends where Victarion just expects, fealty kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But it's also the fact that all these smaller houses are like, well, now's my chance. Let's throw our hat in the ring.
Yeah. And
Asha... so the whole thing has become a mess, really, for Victarion, for Aeron.
Yeah. Asha mentions too that are planning on putting forth themselves as the new king of the Iron Islands. She says the Drum will make a case for himself. Now, the Drum is Dunstan Drum, Lord of Old Wyk. So this is his home court. So maybe he's got some home field advantage here. And the other one, Tarl the Thrice Drowned, who is another prophet of the drowned god, kind of like Aeron Damphair, thinks that Meryn Volmark is the true heir of the Black Line. And so the Black Line is the name for the heritage of House Hoare, who were longtime kings of the Isles and Rivers, the Iron Islands and the Riverlands. Yeah. And their line officially ended with Black Heron at Harrenhal when Aegon the Conqueror and Balerion burned him and his sons. And there's been some pretenders along the way, but Meryn Volmark has some legitimate traces of the house on his mother's side. So, they're thinking of going all the way back to an extinct house that's been extinct for 300 years. So, that's what the Black Line is in reference to.
Yeah, I gotta say, if I was an Iron Islander, I wouldn't be totally thrilled with the Greyjoys, but I have my own sort of worldview.
Right.
And I'm not sure that any of these people would have my worldview, but clearly there's reasons to not like the Greyjoys, but I don't think there's going to be enough support for either of these two to mount a serious challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I think Baelor Blacktide probably has the closest that we've met in the Iron Islands to your worldview, to our more modern day worldview. Although
Asha's plan at the end is not bad.
No, it's very similar.
Let's increase our land by tenfold by taking what's on offer to us, and then. But the problem is, of course, is that the Iron Islanders' worldview is never satisfied with what you've got. It's always reaving and pillaging. So the last thing you want is more land, because that's just less area to reave and pillage.
Yes. The problem is that the whole plan starts with giving back what they've already taken, and that part is very much counter to the mindset of the Ironborn. They're accustomed to plundering, not then returning the property and negotiating. Right. So, right. But I did like her. I did like her metaphor of the fisherman hooking the Leviathan, that it will drag you down if we don't cut it loose. The whole thing, her whole point, shows her intelligence and willingness to see everything, to see all of this from a different perspective. So, yes, you're right.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a perfect metaphor. They did manage to steal the North while nobody was looking, but they just don't have the people to hold it. So what's the point,
If Sea Dragon Point and the Stony Shore are 10 times bigger than the landmass of the Iron Islands, there's just not enough people. We've talked about this when the plan was hatched. They just don't have the people. So, but it already, just from her plans, already looks like she might be the actual best choice to lead the Iron Islands. A better queen than Cersei's been so far, anyway.
True. You like the imagery of Euron's entrance and exit from the tent.
Yeah, I just liked, so, the description before he makes his entrance is that silence descends on the tent, and then Euron makes his entrance. And then when he left, silence followed, and his ship is called Silence. So I like the way Martin put silence at the beginning and the ending of Euron's time on stage here in this chapter.
It's nicely done indeed.
Yes.
And Victarion describes Euron's lips as blue and bruised, and you thought this might mean something. I'm going to speculate. This sounds a little bit like dabbling in magic, in the Eastern Essos way of dabbling in magic.
Right. He's coming from Essos, so possibly he's been drinking Shade of the Evening, the warlock wine, as they call it.
Right.
So
interesting.
The very first thing that Victarion thinks about is that Euron looks unchanged in 3 years. Now, could be clean living, maybe he's gone vegan and, exercises daily and stays out and puts a sunscreen on regularly. Or maybe this is some sort of side effect of Shade of the Evening or some other type of...
I'll say in passing that I don't think 3 years is that long to notice a significant change in a sibling.
Right. I agree.
It seems reasonable to me that might not be. But maybe, like you said, maybe Victarion's just lived a harder life. It sounds like Euron has lived a pretty hard life. I mean, he's been on the ship for 3 years, basically. That would take it out of me, I feel.
Yeah, I guess, unless you're born to it. Maybe the salt air in his hair, keeps him youthful. One thing I was a little bit disappointed in was Aeron Damphair's reaction and challenge that he put up toward Euron. It wasn't much of one. He basically says, "You're not a godly man." And then when Euron says, "Oh, yes, I am. Look at all the heathens that I've killed," he spits and says, "Look, this isn't, what do you think you're looking at here? This is no king," and then walks out. That was it. I was like, come on.
Yeah, I think some of it is again the charisma thing. Aeron doesn't have it, and Euron does.
Yes.
And Euron is able to spin a tale, I mean, he says, "You're not a godly man." And he tells this great story of all of the murder and plundering that he's done, and all the gods, he's had people pray to just by his presence. It's a great story to respond to that question.
It really is.
And Aeron just doesn't have a response. He like you said, he spits and walks out.
Yeah, I was just expecting. He called this Kingsmoot. He's one of the most influential voices on the Iron Islands. I was expecting him to take the opportunity to put Euron in his place and set the groundwork for Victarion's victory. Maybe mention he's been gone for 3 years and he was banished by King Balon, who's a beloved figure in the Iron Islands, and ask, "Hey, To say, just like Asha did. Ask, why did you show up the day after Balon died? If you had no role in his death, as someone who was banned, you shouldn't have been a day's sailing away from the Iron Islands. Point out some of the things that people might think, oh yeah, you know what? What about that? So, at least Asha stayed and disputed with Euron and, making the case known that she thinks that he had a hand in his death, in Balon's death.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Asha asks Victarion is, why was Euron banished? And Victarion's, kind of hems and haws a little bit, doesn't give her exact information. But she said, I was out. I was sailing, I was on the far side of Westeros when he was banished. I come back, he's banished, your wife's dead, and my father won't let us talk about your wife. And it's not until later on that she says, and he killed your wife. And Victarion says, okay, basically here's what happened. He put a baby in my wife's belly. I wanted to kill him. Your father wouldn't let me. He banished him instead and made me have to kill my own wife.
I gotta say, Mackelly, when you say, okay, here's what happened, you sound less like Victarion Greyjoy than anyone I can ever imagine.
Okay, here's what happened. See, what happened was...
if you were casting for Victarion Greyjoy, they'd be like, don't call us.
Not this guy. But my whole point is she kind of pieced it together as the details, she thought about the details, I guess.
Yeah, all right. I'll grant it to you. I was going to argue with you, but I do take your point. She was piecing it together, but she didn't know the specifics. She thought Euron was to blame, but actually Victarion was the one who actually did the murdering.
Right.
But he also says she was only a salt wife, as if distancing himself from this crime.
Yeah. So in Ironborn culture, there's a salt wife and a rock wife, and a salt wife is basically the equivalent of a concubine. They're usually non-Ironborn women taken during raids. And your rock wife is your true spouse. And men, Ironborn men may have several salt wives, but they can only have one rock wife.
Right.
So that's kind of what he was saying is, she was my wife, but not my rock wife.
Right. He's trying to say, yeah, I didn't really care about her, but clearly he did. Clearly
yes.
He's broken up about what he did to this woman.
Yes. Agreed.
That's it. Now your Victarion begins to ring a little bit more true. He's a sensitive soul.
Right.
It is hard to have much sympathy for Victarion here because he murdered his wife. I mean, why would you give any sympathy to that person? But he is steeped in the culture and the mindset of the Iron Islands, and given that his wife slept with his brother and got pregnant, it isn't that surprising what he did. And it's perhaps a tiny sliver of humanity that he cares and feels bad about what he did. But I mean, we're painting around the edges of a pretty dark picture here.
Yes, we're setting the bar pretty low that he feels bad about killing his wife, right? Yeah, we often like to think of our POVs, well, minus Cersei, in a positive light. But, a lot of times they're pretty dark, flawed characters. Yeah. And, this is one instance. If you didn't know that detail about Victarion, you would think, this is a pretty solid captain of a ship. He's a rough guy. He's mentioned that he killed 4 people with his hands and his wife. So, he's not the sweetest of all guys, but,
No.
But then you do know this detail, and you have to let that color your opinion of him.
So I want to get away from this because it's kind of like it makes me feel sad. But so let me talk about something else instead. I think there's a theme running through these books, and it's come up several times in Feast for Crows, of people failing to heed good advice.
Uh-huh.
Asha's offer here is extremely good for Victarion because he doesn't have the votes, and like she says, if you go listen around the campfires, you'll know it yourself. People are listening to Euron's stories. He's getting traction by being who he is. and his exploits are being talked about. But between them, they might have the votes to bring him down. So the only way for Victarion to win the throne here is to accept her offer. And he balks at her offer. It seems that he balks at her offer because of his blinkered worldview.
Right.
He rejects her offer because she wants peace. Because she says, Lady Glover's promised me that we'll get the Stony Shore and Dragonstone Point. We just have to cede Moat Cailin, Torrens Square, and Deepwood Motte. We cede those back. They can't keep those anyway. It's not costing them anything really to give this stuff back if they can increase the Iron Islands size by tenfold.
Right.
It's a fantastic offer. But anyway, he can lie to her. He can say, sure, let's do that. The man murdered his wife, who he loved. He can tell a fib to his niece to get the Seastone Chair.
Yes, absolutely. He could have at least said, we'll sort it out. She wants to be his hand of the king, and he thinks, no king of the Iron Islands has ever had a hand before, that, they're just going to make fun of me.
But every one of them has had advisors.
Right, yes. Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I think she was on the right track with her plan. I think she just went a little too far with the talking about being the hand of the king. If she had just said, let me advise you, let me, be your anything but hand of the king,
Right.
Let me be your protector. Let me be your eyes and your ears. I think maybe it would have possibly landed differently.
Yeah. But because of his rejection, she goes back to, well, in that case, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. It feels like, I mean, hey, we've had votes in these books before, and they've, the apple cart has been upset by various things. Jon Snow winning the Lord.
You know what they need? They need Sam Tarly to broker this agreement here.
He's in the wind. He could have turned up any minute.
Right.
And of course, Victarion says that it's her breath to waste, and he might be right. I do fear that they're splitting the vote, the anti-Euron vote, and that's going to hand it to Euron, and that's a worry for everyone, because charismatic though he may be, there's something wrong with that guy.
Yes, and it is a shame that they can't come to some sort of terms. Like they didn't even try. They didn't even negotiate. Like, like it was just, I want to be your hand. No, okay, well then I'm going to I'm going to stick in the fight.
Maybe she should have started with the opposite. I want you to be my hand.
Right.
No. Okay, I want to be your hand. Well, now we're talking.
Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, but you're right. It only benefits Euron. She knows that she can't win, so she's just taking votes from Victarion. Yeah. And, and yes, Euron is sounding like a folk legend at the campfires almost. And he could probably get a pretty good bounce off of that as far as collecting votes, because it will take time for people to realize, as you said, something's not right with that guy.
Right.
It'll be too late at that point.
Yeah. I mean, again, the for all the candidates, my first pitch when I stand before Naga's bones would be, I think he probably killed Balon.
Right. What was he doing a day's sailing away from the Iron Islands? He's banished. He shouldn't have been anywhere near this place.
All right. Well, that's good stuff. Why don't we talk some spoilers? Remember, you can get the spoiler section if you join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers. Well, that's great spoilers, Mackelly. Thank you so much. Why don't you give us some background that isn't spoilers?
All right.
Why don't you move your focus from the future to the past?
Okay, well, as Victarion is Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet, let's look a little closer at what exactly the Iron Fleet is.
I was just asking about this.
Oh, wow, perfect timing. The Iron Fleet is the largest group of ships in the Iron Islands. The fleet numbers 100 ships. Well, technically 99, as Victarion mentions that they lost one on the way back from Moat Cailin.
Can I call that out as pedantry, by the way? If just a storm would sink one of these ships, the Iron Fleet wouldn't last very long. It wasn't that big of a storm, right? I mean, it feels like ships shouldn't just sink.
Sink in a storm. You'd think they should be built to withstand that.
Exactly.
Well, unlike most of the ships, this is only going to go to further back your point here, but unlike most of the ships of the Ironborn, the Iron Fleet ships are not... Oh, wait. This is not the part that I was...
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Unlike most of the ships of the Ironborn, the Iron Fleet ships are not autonomous. The fleet as a whole is controlled by the Seastone Chair. The fleet is one of the top 3 largest in Westeros, along with the Royal Fleet and the Red Wine Fleet in the Arbor. Now, this bit will go to back your pedantry here. The individual ships that make up the fleet are much larger than the average Ironborn longship. They're sized more like galleys, which would make you think they would be able to withstand a storm even
more withstanding of storms, yes.
The fleet was actually the brainchild of Balon Greyjoy. Balon's father, Quellin, tried to bring the Iron Islands more in line with the mainland. We've talked about that in the past. However, after Quellin's death during Robert's Rebellion, Balon undid much of his father's efforts in favor of independence for the Ironborn, something else we've talked about in the past. Part of that plan was the creation of a powerful naval force. It took 5 years to construct the Iron Fleet, with its larger-than-normal ships for the Ironborn. One of the first maneuvers of the Greyjoy Rebellion was to sail the Iron Fleet to Lannisport and burn the Lannisport fleet. A feat the Ironborn seemed to want to credit Euron for, despite Victarion being the Lord Captain. Asha also brings up Victarion's defeat at Fair Isle, which we talked about in the background of Asha's episode. It's where Stannis trapped the Iron Fleet in the Straits of Fair Isle and attacked from north and south, destroying the Ironborn that they caught in between.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, comparison with the television show, the Kingsmoot is pushed, I've mentioned this before, is pushed way, way back in the story in the TV show. Victarion is basically dropped entirely as a character, perhaps, probably not going to win the Kingsmoot then. It really is Asha, again, who is Yara in the TV show, versus Euron. And there are some special guests giving testimony at the Kingsmoot. But none of this preamble really happened.
Okay. Yeah, I think I recall this well enough.
Pedantry Corner, you wanted to mention that the chests were full of probably just frogs and pestilence at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned it a little bit ago, just that how did he have time to fill his chests with enough items?
I'm going to go with they are filled with pestilence, and he'll open them if they don't vote him king.
Right. Yeah, maybe he has some of those needles that the bog devils, the Crannog men, shoot at their enemies.
I like it. News and notes. We don't have an episode next week because we both have a week off. So it'll be 2 weeks before the next one. Sorry about that. We will miss you.
Yes.
We'll send postcards.
That we shall.
And it's the last week to get your Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise from ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. The store is closing down. Get your stuff while you can.
Yeah. And we have a review from Apple Podcasts France from Natalie993, and the subject is perfect to follow along a reread, which is fantastic because that was the whole point of this podcast in the first place. So
yeah.
These two enjoy what they do, and it shows. It's a very fun, very enjoyable podcast. Lots of interesting extra info with great sense of humor. Well, I'm glad someone appreciates our sense of humor.
Yes. Merci beaucoup, Natalie. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yes.
I whenever I see anything from France, I worry that it's somebody I know, but I really don't know this person. So
okay. All right. An organic French review. I love it. Thank you, Natalie.
All right, let's conclude this one. So Victarion is Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet. Euron's gone for years in banishment from the beloved king, and Asha is well liked but a woman. You'd think that they could get their heads together to defeat Euron here.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Victarion commands the equivalent of the royal fleet of the Ironborn, who are a seagoing people. You would think it would give him the upper hand in votes, you know? It's surely what Aeron was thinking when he called for the Kingsmoot.
Yeah. And Euron, Victarion clearly has worries now, and Asha certainly does. But Euron doesn't seem to at all.
No.
He just goes around spinning his yarns and having word of mouth spread his deeds around the campfires. It's all working out nicely for him. He's got a real good campaign manager. He's got like a James Carville behind him.
Yeah. Now, all this confidence could be to, to psych out Victarion, mess with his head a bit.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah. Now, he sits the Seastone Chair, so he has that advantage. He currently holds Pike, which is not nothing.
True. And, but again, if he loses here, he's going to lose to a majority, and then it's hard to resist a majority.
Right. Yeah. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
But actually, in many respects, the person who's most likely to succumb to violence here is Euron, because if Victarion wins, he really might want to kill Euron, because a transition of power from Euron, who, as you say, holds Pike and sits the Seastone Chair, to Victarion would very likely be problematic.
Right.
And so Victarion might well turn on Euron if he were to win.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Whereas if Euron wins, Victarion can just go back to Moat Cailin and get bitten by frogs.
Right. Victarion he's always feared that word of the whole cuckold situation getting out and him being mocked for it. Possibly Euron's going to play that hand and announce why he was banished to discredit Victarion. Maybe that's his ace up the sleeve.
But you see, again, putting on the Iron Islanders hat here, which is not reflective of my feelings about that, but Victarion's response to it would be what the Iron Islanders would want him to do.
Kill his wife.
Yeah,
I guess.
Any one of us could have a wife cheat on us, but we would murder her, and that's what Victarion did.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, maybe. Or they would think he is not a man. He couldn't keep his wife satisfied. She had to run to his older brother to be satisfied. I don't know.
Yeah.
But also,
I can see why he doesn't want that conversation to be had in broad public. I do understand that.
Yeah, much. Yeah. Maybe Euron's just doing the math. Asha is taking important votes away from Victarion, and without Sam there to intervene, it seems like they're going to go through with splitting the votes, and Jaina Slint will come out in the end as Lord Commander.
Asha's a long shot still, but she has the one thing that they don't have. She is the child of Balon Greyjoy. Her being a woman is obviously going to be a big impediment, but she's won some houses over.
Yeah.
There's the potential for more. She might rock the vote here.
Yeah, if her primary goal is to stop Euron, it feels like it's the wrong choice for her to stay in the fight. But
but then again, she doesn't want to appoint Victarion to be another Balon.
Right. Yeah. And if Baelor Blacktide agrees basically with Asha's platform, maybe others, and more than we imagine, realize the same thing. Maybe
right. And they wouldn't all be willing to voice it, but they think it, because it is a sort of cowardliness compared to what most of the Iron Islanders think.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, she's definitely the only candidate of the Greyjoys seeing the future clearly with a plan to address the future. We can't hold the North, but we can peacefully acquire 10 times the land than we have now.
Right.
Think of how that would benefit us. I will bring you that.
I'm going to tootle my flute and win all of Westeros. That is a pipe dream.
I hope Aeron has more vigor than he showed here in this chapter. I hope that wasn't the end of his attempt to secure victory for Victarion.
He's probably got this fantastic speech, but he's like, I am not wasting it in this tent. This is for Naga's bones, I tell you that.
I hope so. I was thinking possibly no matter how lofty or pious a man becomes, he's still a younger brother intimidated by his older brother.
Yes, true enough. I mean, I'm only a younger brother to an older sister, and I'm not intimidated by her in the slightest, but I know how my younger siblings fawn over my every word.
Yes, and fear your wrath against them.
Exactly. It's as they ought.
Well, you know what? We're in luck.
Why? We've got 2 weeks to travel. How far do we have to travel?
Not at all. We're just going to stay right where we
tent.
are. Yes, just wherever Aeron went is where we're going to travel, because next we get Aeron Damphair's perspective on all this. And not only that, but cases will be made, votes will be cast, and we will finally have ourselves an old-fashioned Ironborn Kingsmoot.
All right, fantastic. Well, as always, there's 4 ways that you can help us. In fact, actually, this is the last time there's 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review, as Natalie993 did. And this is the very last chance you have to buy merchandise at ghostofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of our gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. The upper tiers get you the spoiler section. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you go out and follow us on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.